Pan Buwang just challenged the twin stars alone, and now the abyssal monarch calls him a pure child of darkness. The exquisite, profound world surfaces in Eden's crown, and everyone who thought they understood the hierarchy is about to be proven wrong. Leave a like and subscribe before this darkness spreads. Buwang did not look away from Sha Xing's eyes even a little. His expression was indifferent, and his voice was perfectly calm and collected. "You dare humiliate my owl butterfly divine son so, star divine son. Aren't you worried that your arrogance could backfire on you?" He repeated every word he said, as if afraid that the star divine son hadn't heard him clearly. He even stressed the words so that there could be no doubt as to his meaning. In just the span of a short breath, Sha Xing's eyes experienced the most complicated change of emotions ever in its existence. Astonishment, puzzlement, befuddlement, shock, disbelief, incomprehension, denial. All sorts of emotions mixed haphazardly until they ultimately settled and transformed into overlapping layers of disappointment, derision, and anger. Heh, he. Sha Xing let out a raspy laugh. 1/3 of it was aimed at Pan Buwang, but the other 2/3 was aimed at himself. His eyes no longer looked clear as he met Pan Buwang's eyes. "So, what will you do, Pan Buwang? Could it be?" Pan Buwang raised his right arm and summoned a pitch-black demonic spear. He slammed it against the ground with a dull bang, causing a burst of demonic light and an eerie howl unique to dark, profound energy. "You and I may share a deep bond, but I am ultimately still a son of the owl butterfly kingdom of God. To me, a kingdom of God's honor and pride surpass everything else. Since you humiliated my owl butterfly divine son, you leave me no choice but to point my spear at you." Aya. Washan Yue shook his head regretfully while saying slowly, "What a good performance this is. A pity that my Zinger's sincere loyalty was misplaced on a wolf with a blackened soul." Washan Xing let out a light harumph and said uncaringly, "As expected, you cannot find two types of rats from the same rat hole. Still, this is a good thing for Xing. The sooner he understands what human nature is, the sooner he will grow. In fact, this regent should thank this pitiful Pan Buwang for teaching Xing a good lesson. This one stab from the back alone is far more effective than thousands of my lessons." "That is true," Washan Yue nodded in agreement. He, ha. Sha Xing allowed himself a cold chuckle, but it quickly devolved into uncontrollable laughter. "I viewed you as a close friend because I respected the fact that you loved and hated without disguise, that your actions and words are one. I guess I really am too naive. I was blind this whole time, and I didn't even recognize it. You claimed that you loathed them to the core and hated them so much that your heart is gray like the abyss. But in reality, you can't wait to crawl back under their feet, can you?" Whatever respect that once resided in his eyes vanished completely, and he stopped veiling his insults any longer. "What a shame that this is a fight between divine sons, meaning that you do not have the right to fight against me. Oh no, I almost forgot. You were exiled from the owl butterfly kingdom of God, weren't you? Forget the owl butterfly divine son, you are not even a citizen of owl butterfly anymore." Pan Buwang's expression didn't change. He said coldly, "You are wrong, star divine son. Father's deposition of my title is only verbal. He has never carried out a deposition ceremony." Everyone stared at him with a bit of astonishment as he said calmly, "Assuming that the rules are followed to the letter, I, Pan Buwang, am still the owl butterfly divine son." His declaration caused a good number of people to burst out laughing. It was natural to hold a conferral ceremony to announce to the world that a kingdom of God had appointed a new divine son. Just the same, it was natural not to hold a deposition ceremony to depose a divine son. What would even be the point? Get lost and stop being an embarrassment even more than you already are, Pan Buwang. The Eternal Divine Regent finally spoke up, but every word he spoke was infused with disgust and impatience. He did not even favor Pan Buwang with a side-eye. Pan Buwang did not move. It was at this moment that the chief priest spoke loudly like a gong. Pan Buwang's name is still recorded in the Six Kingdoms' Divine Children record. His name has not been removed. If Pan Buwang is no longer the divine son, then High Priest Wandao shall remove his name from the record after this meeting. But as of now, he is qualified to partake in this battle. The chief priest's word was the deciding factor, and Pan Yushin was helpless to change it, no matter how much he wanted to. Pan Buwang was a useless piece of trash who was abandoned not just by everyone around him, but also by himself. Naturally, there was zero reason the owl butterfly kingdom of God would dispatch someone all the way to High Priest Wandao at the Pure Land just to depose him. It was a mistake that didn't really count as a mistake, and yet the castaway had seized it with both hands and used it to stir up trouble. Pan Buwang's counter-challenge against Sha Xing in defense of Pan Buzuo would not make anyone think better of the owl-butterfly divine son. On the contrary, it would only earn him greater scorn. He could already predict what was going to happen. Having bestowed Pan Buzuo a humiliating defeat only to be betrayed by his close friend, Sha Xing was naturally going to dish out an even more humiliating defeat to Pan Buwang. This was going to humiliate the owl-butterfly kingdom of God even more than it already was. Pan Yusheng could not refute the chief priest, so he said again, "I'm going to say this one more time, Pan Buwang. Get lost." His last two words were imbued with the fury of a divine regent. However, Sha Xing spoke up before Pan Buwang. Divine Son Buwang stood up in order to defend the honor of the owl-butterfly divine son. You should be praising him, not stopping him or getting angry with him. Pray, eternal divine regent. His scorn was positively dripping when he said the words, Divine Son Buwang. Anyway, let's get this over with. Sha Xing raised the heavenly wolf greatsword he had just lowered a short while ago and pointed it at his former close friend. I accept your challenge. Do give me your guidance, Divine Son Buwang. Pan Buwang looked up and said indifferently, You seem to be misunderstanding something, Star Divine Son. I do not intend to challenge you. I intend to challenge the twin stars. Sha Xing was speechless for an instant, then a dark storm brewed on his face. What did you say? Xian Yue, the moon divine son, wasn't looking too good himself. As if he could not feel Sha Xing's erupting anger, Pan Buwang continued in an indifferent tone. Everyone knows that the star divine son and the moon divine son of the star and moon kingdom of God are not unleashing at their full strength unless they fight as one. To me, fighting one of you alone carries no meaning whatsoever. A commotion immediately broke out throughout Eden's crown. Scoffs and low chuckles were everywhere. The crowd was already looking down on Pan Buwang before, but now it looked as if they were looking at a clown. An ugly and pathetic clown. Aya, your actions are really starting to intrigue me. Wushan Yue's curiosity was clearly piqued. It's starting to seem like you're not capitulating to the owl-butterfly kingdom of God after all. It looks more like you're trying to anger Zinger. Or is this an attempt to humiliate owl-butterfly further at the cost of yourself? Wushan Xing narrowed his eyes. It's probably the latter. No, it's probably both. After all, angering the heavenly wolf would allow the latter objective to be fulfilled more thoroughly. Well, whatever the truth is, this is quite interesting, isn't it? Oh yes, it is most interesting. Wushan Yue's eyes were narrowed into a pair of seductive slits. While clutching his right face, Pan Buzuo walked over to Pan Yusheng and said hoarsely, He's not trying to repulse the star and moon, father. He's repulsing us, Pan Yusheng said coldly. Shut up. Pan Buzuo immediately fell silent. Heh, Sha Xing laughed. For the first time, he understood why some people laughed when their rage had reached its peak. Challenge the twin stars, you say? Who do you think you are? The way he looked at Pan Buwang was unfamiliar and icy. Still, if you dare to issue us the challenge, how could we bear to turn you down? Bang. The heavenly wolf holds a star struck the ground hard, causing a stunning shockwave imbued with the fury of the star divine sun to wash out to the surroundings. Pan Buwang's black hair and black clothes fluttered wildly because of it. If you are able to defeat me first, then I will invite the moon divine sun onto the battlefield and graciously show you the true power of the twin stars. Is this term acceptable to you, divine son Buwang? Defeat me first. Graciously. Both words were stressed with dripping scorn. Accepted. Pan Buwang agreed to it without any hesitation whatsoever. This is the Pure Land, and the Abyssal Monarch is watching. You will not go against your promise? As soon as he finished, he morphed into a shadow and entered the barrier. He stopped about 300 meters away from Sha Xing and met his eyes. 1 moment ago, they were still close friends. Now it was as if a million chasms were standing between the two of them. Do you know what you look like to me right now, Pan Buwang? Sha Xing let out a low chuckle. You look like an ousted dog whose skin has been stripped and whose back was broken before it was tossed out of the front door. But it still barked and wagged its tail for its master in hopes of crawling back to its former home one day. Before this, Sha Xing never thought that he would one day voice such horrifying insults to anyone, much less imagine that he would aim them at Pan Buwang. Pan Buwang did not grow angry or annoyed, however. His eyes resembled pools of dead water, and his heart was just as calm as his expression. Buoyed within his soul were the Fog Monarch's words to him many days ago. Buwang, What should this disciple do after I go to the Pure Land, Master? Fog Monarch. Wait. You will wait until the battle of divine children begins, and Sha Xing dishes out a humiliating defeat to Pan Buzuo and breaks his divine dignity for your sake. Buwang. But I already owe Sha Xing a huge favor by asking him to bring me into the Pure Land. Why would he take it further and offend the owl butterfly kingdom of God for me? Fog Monarch. If you tell him that you are the Fog Monarch's disciple, then he will. After all, you won't just be a friend who trusted him and asked him for help anymore. You would be accomplices who share a secret called the Fog Monarch. Nothing improves a person's bond in an invisible manner better than a shared secret. The bigger the secret, the stronger the bond. Combined with the fact that he is desperate to repay his debt and favor to the Fog Monarch, Sha Xing is a man who will do what he believes is right. Buwang. Your judgment is never wrong, so I believe you, Master. So what should this disciple do after that? Fog Monarch. After Pan Buzuo is defeated, you will challenge Sha Xing to a fight as an owl butterfly divine son. You will claim that your reason for doing so is to defend the owl butterfly divine son's honor. Buwang. What? But Sha Xing is the only one who treated me like he used to, despite my fall from grace. Such loyalty is beyond precious, not to mention that he is my one and only true friend in this world. If he really would go so far as to offend the owl butterfly kingdom of God for me, then his spirit of loyalty truly is as heavy as a mountain. How can I possibly betray such? Fog Monarch. Silence! For the sake of solidifying his position, your own brother went so far as to trample your dignity into the mud and kill your mother. To protect your brother, the father who once protected and cherished you, tossed you out of the owl butterfly kingdom of God like trash. After what your own blood relative did to you, someone who has lost absolutely everything, dares to act so weak and pedantic for so-called friendship. It would seem that I was mistaken about you after all. A useless piece of trash is all you are destined to be. Now get out of my face with that so-called spirit of loyalty of yours. Buwang. Please calm down, Master. Your words are a wake-up call to me. I understand my mistake, and I promise I will never do it again. I beg for your forgiveness, Master. I promise I will do my utmost to defeat Sha Xing at the Pure Land. Pan Buwang slowly crossed his spear in front of him while ripples of darkness slowly circled his body. In the endless fog, he was growing every day. Out of everything, his profound strength grew the slowest, and his talent for darkness and mentality grew the fastest. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was a completely different man from before. To the spectators, this unexpected duel wasn't a part of the battle of divine children. This was just a comedic interlude. Even Pan Buzuo had suffered a horrible defeat in the hands of Sha Xing. So how could Pan Buwang, someone whose divine essence and talent for darkness were all inferior to his brother, possibly defeat Sha Xing? His desire to witness the twin stars in action was an even bigger joke. Seeing Pan Buwang's spear, Sha Xing let out another disdainful laugh. This spear is probably undeserving of your identity as an owl butterfly divine son. Perhaps you should borrow Cold Crow from your other divine son. I do not want to hear complaints that you lost because your weapon isn't up to snuff later. He will lend it to you, right? You are both owl butterfly divine sons, and you are brothers who are connected by blood. Surely he won't turn you down, right? There is no need. Pan Buwang said indifferently and softly, this spear is called Chang Zheng, of the Silent Night. It was the spear my mother used when she was still alive. When she entrusted it to me, she once said that Chang Zheng is the light-bringing star. Even if I lose everything, even if I plummet into the silent night, so long as her spear is with me, she will always be with me and illuminate my path for me. The eerie black light circulating the spear seemed to gain a warm color as he spoke of his mother. Pan Yusheng looked away without a shred of guilt or regret in his eyes whatsoever. Sha Xing did not taunt Pan Buwang further. He still let out a low shout and summoned the heavenly wolf's shadow. The shadow bared its fangs and displayed power and pressure greater than when he was facing Pan Buzuo. For the sake of our old friendship, I will grant you one last dignity, the most terrible defeat you shall ever receive in your life. ROAARRR. The heavenly wolf looked up at the moon and shook the skies with its howls. The next moment, a greatsword wreathed in destructive energies crashed down on Pan Buwang. The stunning divine light of the heavenly wolf crossed the 300 meters between the two combatants in just an instant. The heavenly wolf's pressure hadn't approached yet, and already Pan Buwang was forced back a small step. A deep, dark glint smoldered behind his pupils as the reflection of the heavenly wolf's shadow rapidly grew bigger in his eyes. Buwang, I promise I will do my utmost to defeat Sha Xing at the Pure Land. Fog Monarch. No, you will not defeat him, you will crush him. Buwang. Crush, can you be more specific, Master? Fog Monarch. You will defeat him utterly in the span of 3 exchanges. Buwang. Master, please believe that I am not denigrating myself when I say this. I am fully confident that I can defeat Sha Xing, but 3 exchanges. This disciple simply cannot do it. Fog Monarch. In a fair fight, of course you cannot do it. But don't forget that you hold a huge advantage over Sha Xing in the duel. It's called information. Right now, your body is perfectly compatible with dark, profound energy. Such an affinity has never appeared in the abyss before and is something even your father can only dream of. Therefore, anyone who fights you for the first time will sorely misjudge your control over darkness. Buwang. You're saying, I should win by a surprise move? Fog Monarch. Correct. This is an advantage that will only work once. Naturally, you should maximize what you can gain from it. The duel between divine children is not entirely the same as a common duel. According to past regulations, you will be fighting within a barrier that's only 30 kilometers wide. The first thing you should do is to anger Sha Xing. Your open betrayal will apply the first layer of anger on him, and your wish to challenge the twin stars will add the second layer. Anger consumes the mind. A mature champion will do their best to appease their anger during combat, but a heavenly wolf is different. Anger fuels a heavenly wolf's strength, so not only would he not appease his anger, he would allow it to burn him freely. In his anger, he will try to grant you the most terrible defeat in the shortest amount of time possible. Therefore, his chosen sword style will be one that fits his rage. He will attack you first. His first attack will be 1/5 Heavenly Wolf Slash, 2/3 Wild Fang, and 1/10 Instantaneous Hell Calamity. I will now teach you how to identify the cues of these sword techniques. Everything was going exactly to the script his master wrote. From the instant Sha Xing raised his sword, Pan Buwang immediately recognized that he was using the second sword style of the Heavenly Wolf Hell God's Tome, Wild Fang. Pan Buwang had no idea how his master was familiar with the Star and Moon Kingdom of God's Heavenly Wolf style to a degree that could only be described as horrifying. He didn't dare to ask about it either. If his cues indicate that he is unleashing Wild Fang, you should take half a step to the left and pretend to be pushed back somewhat when you receive the attack. Seeing that Wild Fang is able to press you to this extent, there is over a 90% chance that Sha Xing would follow up with Heavenly Star Lamentation. Heavenly Star Lamentation is as powerful as it is full of openings. However, this flaw doesn't matter assuming that the opponent is sufficiently suppressed by the previous technique. As far as Sha Xing knows, as far as everyone in the abyss knows, even if you give up on defense completely and throw yourself into an utterly reckless offensive, you still cannot unleash enough dark, profound energy to take advantage of an opening while in a suppressed state. So, as soon as his heavenly star glimmers a little, you will strike the spot 3 fingers below his right shoulder bone with an explosion of dark energy. This one explosion is enough to collapse his building heavenly star power completely and create a massive backlash. 1. Classical Chinese name for planet Venus in the west after dusk. Alone cultivation, weapon, even control over profound energy. Sha Xing was superior to Pan Buwang in terms of everything. As if that wasn't enough, he was also in a state of fury. As a result, he was able to suppress Pan Buwang in one strike. This was the outcome everyone expected. There was nothing out of the ordinary whatsoever. Before Wild Fang's power was spent, Sha Xing's sword style suddenly underwent a change. The azure wolf's shadow let out a mournful howl with eyes that shone like a heavenly star and a pressure that threatened to break open the heaven itself. It was none other than the heavenly wolf third sword style, Heavenly Star Lamentation. This sword style descended like a meteor that would set civilization back a couple of millennia. He was fully confident that this one attack would drive Pan Buwang into a corner and kill off any chance for him to make a comeback, leaving naught but defiant, useless struggles. In fact, that seemed to be the case. Pan Buwang was pressured to the point where his posture was slightly off balance. When he raised his arm seemingly to block the attack, his movement looked strained and slow. Rather than a counterattack, it looked more like a person's instinctive reaction toward encroaching danger. Then, the arm that seemed to have been raised in futility suddenly unleashed a burst of dark, profound energy. Although it lasted only an instant, the dark, profound light was unbelievably pure and dark. It engulfed most of the light that existed in the space they were fighting in immediately. the abyssal monarch who had been watching the battle with casual ease so far, not interfering or commenting to the point where he felt like a foreign spectator, reacted for the first time. Specifically, a tiny flash had appeared in his eyes before it disappeared like it never happened. When the world suddenly darkened and surprise caught him out of nowhere, Sha Xing's pupils contracted to pins. That was all the reaction he managed to muster before a pitch-black palm struck him 3 fingers below his right shoulder bone. He was completely unable to defend himself. Bang! The explosion of energy wasn't intense by any means, but it completely destroyed the energy Sha Xing had just accumulated and would have unleashed the next instant. As a result, the heavenly star that should have engulfed Pan Buwang died inside his body and eyes instead. The consequence of failure was a backlash that was almost as bad as his strength slamming into an immovable wall and rebounding upon himself. Crack, his bones broke like an avalanche, and his arm was mutilated all the way to his right chest. Even worse than the physical injury was his own profound energy running rampant as it died. A muffled groan escaped his lips as he hit the ground with a terrible thud before rebounding high up into the sky. The unwanted foe flight would continue for a while until Sha Xing finally managed to arrest himself, albeit just barely. The heavenly wolf's will and the pride of a divine son were engraved into Sha Xing's marrow. That was why he ultimately did not let go of Heavenly Star holds a star despite suffering a terrible and unexpected blow. However, the world darkened once more, and the next thing he knew, Pan Buwang's deep, black, and ice-cold eyes appeared right before his own. His right arm had not yet regained its feeling, and his energies were running out of control inside his body. As a result, he only managed to muster 1/5 of his strength and held his greatsword in front of himself. Clang! Wreathed in dark, profound energy, Chang Zheng of the Silent Night drew a twisted arc of darkness across the air before smacking Sha Xing right across the torso. The arc would not fade for a very, very long time. Sha Xing immediately crashed toward the ground like a meteor fragment, his afterimage lingering in the air, and his descent causing an ear-piercing shriek that grated on everyone's ears. When he finally hit the ground, the ensuing bang was such that the echoes would linger in Eden's crown for a long, long time. The rumbles were utterly devoid of any other noise. It was because no one was speaking at all. Every single person present at the venue was notable. Right now, though, they were all wearing different expressions of astonishment or even shock. Pan Bujuo's eyes were wide like saucers. He had no idea that the hand he used to cover up the right side of his face was hanging by his side. Pan Yusheng, the man who never gave Pan Buwang so much as a side-eye from the start until the end, was now staring straight at him. Such was his shock that he had even taken an unconscious step forward. As the prey eternal divine regent, and the man with the strongest dark profound energy in the world, no one knew better than him what that instantaneous burst of darkness meant. Yun Qi was the only person at the scene who felt nothing from this outcome. There was neither astonishment nor pleasant surprise. To him, Sha Xing was far too predictable for his own good. Ha! Sha Xing let out an explosive roar and bounced back to his feet. Wielding his sword with his left hand and wearing a pair of eyes that could only be found in a cornered wolf, he glared at Pan Buwang and uttered, "What a pleasant surprise you have given me, Pan Buwang." Although his right arm was mutilated, Sha Xing had recovered from the sudden collapse of his internal energies. His aura was at least several times more stunning and intense than before, and the heavenly wolf's shadow behind his back was carrying itself in an unprecedentedly violent fashion. It was at this moment that a warm hand slowly grabbed his arm. Like a basin of cold water, the sensation rapidly extinguished his anger and awakened his reason. It was only then that Sha Xing realized that he was standing next to Xian Yue, and outside the barrier. In other words, he had lost. He had lost at the hands of someone he could never lose to, and in a single exchange no less. Xian Yue gave Sha Xing a long look and tightened his grip slightly. Then he declared, "Your surprise move is beyond stunning, Divine Son Buwang. This is our defeat." If you lost, you lost. No matter how surprising the defeat was, no matter how reluctant he was to accept it, he must accept it. This was the minimum level of dignity, and bearing a divine son was expected to display in public. Sha Xing was gritting his teeth, and the wolfish shadow in his eyes looked distorted enough to rend itself apart. Still, he did not say a word. He, a divine son of star and moon, had lost to a castaway of owl butterfly in one exchange. Ha, how laughable, how humiliating, so what? This was the pure land and the rules of the battle between divine children. What did his feelings amount to? Meanwhile, Wuxian Xing and Wuxian Yue were exchanging glances with each other. Even now, the astonishment in their eyes hadn't faded completely. The power he unleashed was standard, but it struck the 7th inch of Sha Xing's technique perfectly. Wuxian Xing muttered under his breath, "If this is a coincidence, it is too much of a coincidence. If it is not, I would rather believe that it is a coincidence." Setting aside whether or not it is a coincidence, Wuxian Yue's long, narrow eyes narrowed even further until they resembled a pair of beautiful and dangerous new moons. Could Pan Yusheng unleash his dark, profound energy instantaneously without showing any signs beforehand? Wuxian Xing replied without hesitation, "No." Everyone walking the way of the profound knew that mastering ordinary profound energy was akin to wielding a weapon. No matter how complicated or heavy it was, assuming that the profound practitioner gave it his all, it was only a matter of time before they mastered it. However, mastering dark, profound energy was like trying to control a powerful but vile beast that was always struggling and rampaging against its wielder. One misstep and this damned beast would bite them in return. Pan Buwang's release of dark, profound energy just now looked so easy, casual, and unimpeded. It was as if he were moving his own body. Could it be? Darkness affinity. Behind Pan Yusheng, an owl butterfly elder let out an unconscious, trembling remark. However, he immediately rejected his own assumption. No, that is impossible. Not even the divine regents could pull off such a thing, so how could he? It's just impossible. Of course it's impossible. It's probably just a coincidence. After all, even the wildest, craziest beast cannot be rampaging all the time, right? It took no effort for the speaker to convince everyone that this was the truth. After all, who could, would, or was willing to believe that the divine son they had cast away would possess an unthinkable darkness affinity that even the divine regents of Owl Butterfly only dreamed of having? Sha Xing is out of bounds. Pan Buwang wins. The chief priest announced the result indifferently, catching everyone by surprise. Sha Xing was still panting heavily, but he ultimately managed to put a lid on the anger that was still boiling like an out-of-control volcano. Glaring at Pan Buwang and gritting his teeth tightly, he uttered, "Congratulations on reclaiming the honor of the Owl Butterfly Divine Son Buwang. Heh. You finally have a real shot at returning, don't you? What are you waiting for? Go take credit for your achievement and beg for a reward already." Pan Buwang did not withdraw his strength, however. Darkness still circling around his spear, he looked at Sha Xing and said, "You seem to have forgotten something, Star Divine Son. Before our fight, you promised me that you would invite the Moon Divine Son onto the battlefield and graciously show me the true power of the twin stars." Sha Xing's expression stiffened in an instant. Xian Yue did not look astonished or annoyed, however. Smiling, he said, "Of course not. The Star and Moon Kingdom of God value promises like gold, and the Star Divine Son and the Moon Divine Son have been one for many generations. Sha Xing's promise is no different from my promise. Since we lost, we will fulfill our promise as a matter of course." Sha Xing looked at Xian Yue. The moment their gazes met, they understood each other without communicating a single word. Sha Xing was soundlessly apologizing to Xian Yue, and Xian Yue was telling him there was no need. The twin stars came into being when the star god and the moon god began sharing a single artifact of inheritance. Every generation, the two divine sons were required to achieve synchronization of cultivation, breath, and even soul. Because the requirements for compatibility were so strict, the power they unleashed when they worked together went beyond simple multiplication. For the two of them to fight Pan Buwang together, their victory was synonymous with defeat. However, a promise given must be kept no matter what. So they entered the barrier together and faced Pan Buwang shoulder to shoulder. Light and shadow circulated in Xian Yue's hand, and a gorgeous-looking purple sword manifested. Drawing an elegant crescent with the blade, Xian Yue pointed the tip of the sword at Pan Buwang and declared, "Xian Yue of the Star and Moon Kingdom of God requests your guidance." For a time, purple radiance illuminated the sky, fantastical and dreamlike. It was at this moment that a ripple stirred in Shenwu's dead, silent eyes. It looked like befuddlement and puzzlement, but it lasted only an instant before vanishing like it never was. Back on the battlefield, Sha Xing did not say a word. Heavenly Wolf Holds a Star was pointed soundlessly toward the floor, and his power was perfectly contained within his body. However, everyone outside the barrier felt a terrible pressure from him. The only thing scarier than a wolf was an angry wolf, and the only thing scarier than an angry wolf was a wounded wolf. The twins' postures were different, and their sword styles looked contradictory. And yet they gave off a vague but strange feeling of flawless synchrony when they stood together. It was as if they were originally one person. It was a kind of wholeness that could not tolerate any foreign object or even the slightest bit of separation. Just now, everyone was laughing at the idea of Pan Buwang challenging the twin stars. Now, just the blink of an eye later, it was actually happening. Whatever the outcome of this battle was, this scene alone was enough to blast the name of Pan Buwang, even if the title of Divine Son had been stripped from him, throughout the abyss. Tusk, a fool cannot help but be a fool. He could have stopped here after achieving an unlikely victory, but no, he just had to overdo it and ruin everything he had gained. Pan Buzuo muttered hatefully to himself before sneaking a glance at his father. It was then that he realized Pan Yusheng was wearing a deep frown. His eyebrows were knitted together, and his eyes were focused to pins. The divine regent wasn't wearing an expression of annoyance and disgust that he expected at all. Don't underestimate him. Xing's unexpected sound transmission startled both Sha Xing and Xian Yue. Something is off about this Pan Buwang. Do not underestimate him. They were going to face down Pan Buwang as a pair, as the twin stars, and yet the heavenly star divine regent decided to warn them not to underestimate him. The shock the duo felt at this moment was probably greater than even the shock of Sha Xing being defeated by Pan Buwang in one exchange. The duo's mindset, and even the way they looked at Pan Buwang, shifted a little. Then they entered a state of complete focus. Their profound chi merged seamlessly and their breathing matched perfectly. They could even feel their heartbeats overlapping with each other. "Begin," the chief priest declared indifferently. Pan Buwang said nothing. The only thing that got stronger was the ripples of darkness flowing around his body. Buwang, assuming this disciple successfully crushes Sha Xing, what should I do next? Fog Monarch, what else? You should crush the twin stars next, of course. Buwang, the first time this disciple visited the star and moon kingdom of God, I was lucky enough to witness the strength of the twin stars. Forgive me for saying this, Master, but this disciple has no chance of winning against them. Fog Monarch, of course, you cannot beat them in a fair fight, but again, you hold a massive advantage over first-time opponents. It's the exact same one that allows you to beat Sha Xing, information. Not only that, they have a massive disadvantage that you can exploit. Buwang, disadvantage? Please enlighten me, Master. Fog Monarch, their advantage is their greatest disadvantage. Buwang, Fog Monarch, engrave this into your memory, Buwang. A person is most unguarded in their proudest and greatest area of expertise. The star and moon divine sons are in perfect harmony. It is also the biggest source of pride. When they are united, it is as if invisible threads are linking them together. These threads connect their aura perception and will seamlessly to create a level of power that is far greater than if they were fighting individually. However, if these threads were severed from the get-go, then the two powerful divine sons will turn into headless flies who have lost all of their senses. That will be your chance to carve your path to victory? Buwang, what should this disciple do? Fog Monarch, dark profound energy naturally devours. It is in fact the bane of their ability to harmonize. Unfortunately, the original Abyss Prey eternal art, practiced by the Owl Butterfly Kingdom of God, is great at devouring life, but lacking in the ability to devour the soul. This is why I am going to teach you a new technique. A soul-devouring profound skill I invented based on your original Abyss Prey eternal art. I call it the original abyss that severs the night. Remember, you are the one who discovered and invented this profound skill. The star divine sun and moon divine sun attacked at the same time. The heavenly wolf shook the sky, and the purple moon illuminated the soul. The two powers were completely different, yet they enveloped and completely locked down the space Pan Buwang existed in. Not a single flaw could be found internally, nor could any be seen externally. It was like a pair of hands naturally and easily casting a force field that made up for each other's weaknesses. Darkness leaped across his body as Pan Buwang slowly raised his head. It looked like he was channeling his profound energy, but his eyes had turned into black abysses containing thousands of layers of dark nights a long time ago. Rumble, the air currents were pushed aside by force as Sha Xing's silhouette appeared in the sky, and the might of the heavenly wolf descended in rage. Behind the heavenly wolf, a purple beam followed closely and seamlessly. The first strike was the only time the two powers were working separately. After that, the heavenly wolf and the purple pylon would harmonize and unleash a flurry of unending, seamless attacks. Unless the defender was overwhelmingly greater in terms of cultivation, they would face an unending torrent of attacks that resembled a downpour. Forget retaliating, they would not even have an instant to breathe. Still, Pan Buwang's Chang Zheng of the Silent Night did not move. It wasn't until the Heavenly Wolf Greatsword was less than 30 meters away from him that the black light in his eyes finally reached peak saturation. In an instant, darkness engulfed everything. There was no sound or sign whatsoever. A second ago, everything was still normal. Next, everything inside the battlefield had transformed into darkness. Cries of shock erupted everywhere. Even the prey eternal divine regent could not conceal the explosive shock in his eyes. The darkness spilled into Yun Qi's eyes, but could not touch the bottomless abyss that resided within. This move was taken from the illusory devil tome of Eternal Night. It was called Lightless Eternal Night. By combining the power of eternal calamity of darkness and original abyss prey eternal art, he turned it into the original abyss that severs the night. He also transformed the profound skill enough that even someone who knew the illusory devil tome of Eternal Night would not be able to put two and two together easily. Yue's worlds. Even the divine blaze of the heavenly wolf and the beautiful radiance of the purple pylon were devoured by the impossibly thick and anomalous darkness completely. They weren't worried, though. If this darkness only muted their 5 senses, then the most it could do was astonish them for an instant. The next moment, an involuntary shudder coursed through their souls. The soul aura they had projected beyond their physical bodies, and the soul strings that seamlessly linked them together, were suddenly under attack, as if countless pitch-black, demonic blades and saws were tearing and sawing at them. By the time terrific soul pain and fear gripped them, before they could even react to the sudden attack, the link between them had already been violently severed. Buzzing echoed throughout their soul seas before everything plummeted into borderless darkness. If Sha Xing or Xian Yue had experienced the original abyss that severs the night without the other, assuming that it was the first time they ever encountered this technique, and assuming that they were completely caught off guard, then it still wouldn't be a crippling blow. At worst, they would lose their 5 senses for several breaths, and their minds would turn blank for several instants. In a straight fight, the technique would cost them dearly, but it would not kill them. However, 2/5 of the perfect harmony between the star Divine Sun and the moon Divine Sun was founded on profound energy and aura, and the rest was their soul auras. When their soul auras were perfectly synchronized, each of them was bearing 2 people's worth of perception. In this state, if they were to lose their link in a completely unexpected and instantaneous fashion, then the soul collapse they received was over twice as severe as a matter of course. As a result, both divine sons lost their consciousness for nearly a full breath. Pan Buwang did not move his feet. All he did was swing Chang Zheng of the Silent Night and draw a black arc in the air that severed even the darkness. The darkness devoured the light, devoured the aura and soul, devoured all the sounds. As a result, the spectators only saw 2 bent figures hurtling out of the darkness-filled barrier and hitting the floor in the same stiff fashion. They did not get back up immediately either. They were stiff and frozen like a pair of soulless puppets. Bang! Clang! 2 heavy noises followed as the Heavenly Wolf Greatsword and the Purple Pylon Sword flew out of the darkness and stabbed into the floor next to the duo with great accuracy. It was only now that the eyes of the 2 divine sons regained their clarity and focus and stood up. They instinctively reached out and grabbed their weapons once more, but their bodies and expressions stiffened again when they found themselves staring at the barrier. The darkness faded and Pan Buwang's silhouette re-entered everyone's view. He was still standing there. It was almost as if they hadn't moved a step. For a moment, shocked and frozen, silence encompassed the whole temple. Then it exploded into an uncontrollable uproar like the dissipating darkness. What? What just happened? Did the twin stars just lose instantly? How? What? It looks like the soul connection between the twin stars was instantly severed. That is why they suffered a soul collapse. It was mentioned in the records that dark, profound energy possesses the strongest potency for soul devouring out of everything. However, the dark, profound arts of the owl butterfly kingdom of God clearly exhibited no such characteristics. Forget seeing, I have never even heard of a soul-devouring domain of darkness like Pan Buwang's before. The most terrifying thing about this domain is that it was unleashed almost instantaneously. Forget 2 youngsters, even this old one would be caught off guard for a bit. Meanwhile, Pan Buzuo had just finished picking up the jaw he had left on the floor. Forcing himself to stay calm, he asked in a low tone, "Father, this isn't our technique at all. What in the abyss is this?" He waited for a moment but received no response. When he finally turned to look at his father, he saw for the first time a true expression of utter shock on his face. When his gaze shifted backward, he saw that every owl butterfly elite was wearing a shocked expression as well. Sha Xing and Xian Yue are out of bounds. Pan Buwang wins. It wasn't until the chief priest declared Pan Buwang's victory that the cacophony was finally settled. While he was announcing, the chief priest's gaze had briefly lingered on his person as well. Clap, clap, clap. It was at this moment that Xing rose to his feet and clapped his hands. He said, although this was yet another incredibly swift fight, it was no less exquisite and eye-opening than the first one. Even this divine regent must offer my praise. As a divine regent, his words were spoken without any veiled meaning or insult. His compliment was wholly unreserved as well. Xing, Yue? He looked at the two divine sons who still couldn't quite process what just happened. From the day you achieved perfect harmony, you have never suffered defeat in the hands of an opponent who is one minor level above you. But today, you have lost to an opponent at the same cultivation level as you in one breath. Do you think that this outcome is unfair? After the heavenly star divine regent's voice dispelled the darkness entrenched in their souls, their expressions gradually turned solemn, and they performed a bow at the same time. No, this disciple accepts this defeat wholeheartedly. This disciple will engrave this defeat into his heart. Admitting defeat without fanfare was, in fact, the best way to pick up one's shattered dignity. This is nothing, Wushan Yue consoled them smilingly. Today's defeat may become the foundation of tomorrow's success. Now come, clear your mind of stray thoughts and concentrate. Everyone's gaze was focused on Pan Buwang. Wushan Xing said frankly, "My immature disciple, Sha Xing, lost sight of himself and insulted divine son Bu Zhu recklessly after achieving a minor victory over him. His mistake has been punished by divine son Buwang. I doubt he will forget this slap to the face even after many years. I hereby offer my congratulations to the Prey Eternal Divine Regent and Owl Butterfly Kingdom of God. Such an excellent God-bearer is rare, even if you search throughout the history of the Abyss. Do color me envious." Although Sha Xing had defeated and humiliated Pan Buzuo in combat, Pan Buwang had instantly defeated Sha Xing in return. This alone had earned back the face the Owl Butterfly Kingdom of God had lost several-fold. But his feat of defeating the twin stars alone. Without exaggeration, as the weakest kingdom of God of the six, they had never produced a single divine child who could measure up to even a sliver of what Pan Buwang had achieved today. This was easily the greatest show darkness had put on this stage so far. And yet not a single man or woman in the Owl Butterfly Kingdom of God could wear a smile on their faces. Their pride and excitement should be bursting right now, and yet not an ounce could be seen anywhere. The Prey Eternal Divine Regent's reply was unbelievably stiff as well. "You exaggerate, Heavenly Star Divine Regent. Fortune decided to favor us today, that's all." No one was surprised by the Owl Butterfly Kingdom of God's reaction. After all, everyone generally knew what happened during the replacement of a divine child. If Pan Buzuo were the one who achieved this feat, every Owl Butterfly member would probably be screaming themselves hoarse and dancing like no tomorrow, decorum be damned. But Pan Buwang, all they felt from his success was indescribable discomfort. Pan Buzuo was gritting his teeth. He was clearly trying to stay calm and collected, but the uncontrollable, constant twitching of the corners of his mouth betrayed how he really felt. He knew perfectly well what was going to happen. He would still be the Owl Butterfly Divine Son, and Pan Buwang was still going to be the castaway. But after today, not only would Pan Buwang's reputation surpass his, he would become the man's foil, or even laughingstock for a long, long time to come. "Pan Buwang," it was at this moment that the chief priest spoke once more, "you can now choose another person to fight or take a short break." Pan Buwang did not move. He was staring straight ahead. However, the corner of his eye was being drawn uncontrollably toward Shenwu again, and again, and again. "You must withdraw decisively after defeating the Star and Moon Divine Sons. You will not hesitate or dilly-dally, and you will not stir up unnecessary trouble no matter how much you hate Pan Buzuo or how much you wish to kill Shenwu." Master's advice rang inside his soul sea again and again. In the end, he was able to tear the edge of his vision from Shenwu. However, the figure he had just decided to tear away from abruptly appeared in front of him in full. Shenwu herself had entered the barrier to face Pan Buwang. Shen Wuyi of the eternal night kingdom of God requests your guidance. The celestial-like voice hit him like a hammer. She looked like snow floating under the moon, soaking one to the bone in coldness and desolation. And yet she was also indescribably pure and lofty. When Pan Buwang's eyes met hers, her exquisite countenance and dreamlike aura did not stun him. On the contrary, it very nearly caused him to lose control and reveal the terrible bloodthirst he kept hidden in his marrow. Withdraw decisively. You will not stir up unnecessary trouble. No matter how much you wish to kill Shen Wuyi, you will not stir up unnecessary trouble. You will not. All 10 of his fingers curled up a little. It wasn't until a few breaths later that they finally relaxed bit by bit. Apologies, he said in a voice as cool and sonorous as the chime of a night bell, but I have no reason to fight you, since the rules dictate that the challenged person must accept a challenge or surrender. I choose to surrender. These 4 words were easily the hardest words for any divine son or divine daughter to say in this battle, much less the battle between divine children, and yet they had tumbled out of his mouth as smooth as butter. Not a hint of defiance, hatred, or resentment could be detected in his voice. There was only cool indifference that resembled a cold spring on an autumn night. Shen Wuyi did not respond. The spectators were exchanging looks as well. Yet again, Pan Buwang had surprised them. They could no longer understand or predict Pan Buwang's behavior. Just what on earth was he trying to do? And what in the abyss had happened to him during the years he vanished? The chief priest's gaze settled on Pan Buwang once more. You may receive a wish from the abyssal monarch if you perform splendidly in battle. Are you sure you want to surrender without a fight? The chief priest never wasted his breath, and yet he was encouraging Pan Buwang to keep fighting. Clearly, more than most people at the scene, he understood just how extraordinary Pan Buwang's performance was. Yes, I surrender. However, Pan Buwang did not hesitate for even an instant. While showered by puzzlement and shock from all sides, he gave his answer right after the chief priest had asked him the question. The chief priest stopped trying after that. He announced, Pan Buwang has surrendered the fight. Shen Wuyi wins. Once a participant had lost, they were not allowed to enter the battlefield once more. However, the abyssal monarch's choice was not decided by victory or defeat. Pan Buwang turned around, and it looked like he was going to step out of the barrier. It was at this moment that a voice echoed in everyone's ear, eliminating all noise in Eden's crown and freezing every wisp of aura instantly. Come to me, Pan Buwang. Pan Buwang froze in his tracks and turned completely blank in both expression and gaze. He did not move for a very, very long time, as if someone had cast a freezing spell on him. Eden's crown itself was so silent that a pin drop could be heard. Everyone at the scene, from the highest divine regent to the youngest profound practitioner, was frozen as well. No one dared to say a word, even though their hearts were thudding like drumbeats. Pan Buwang was utterly speechless. He looked like his soul had been stolen from him. However, the eternal divine regent's shock and befuddlement were almost 10 times greater than his. Yes, it was only now that Pan Buwang seemingly regained his senses and forced the word out of his mouth. Then, he turned around and began walking toward the abyssal monarch. His footsteps were slow and cautious, as if he was treading on the edge of a cloud belonging only in the dream world. For the longest time, the abyssal monarch had only played the role of a spectator in the battle between divine children. Forget speaking, his expression hadn't so much as twitched even once throughout the event. Not a single time. But today, he spoke up and addressed Pan Buwang directly. No one dared to guess what this could mean. Finally, while everyone's gaze was glued to his person, Pan Buwang arrived before the abyssal monarch and dropped to his knees. The abyssal monarch descended from the sky and landed just one step away from Pan Buwang. Then he extended a hand that looked like sacred jade and flowed with indistinct divine light, and touched Pan Buwang on the shoulder. The contact only lasted a moment before he pulled away. Pan Buwang, he addressed the young man directly. Although it was the voice of the monarch, it sounded as relaxing, elegant, and gentle as the sound of heated jades striking against each other. If it is okay with you, can you tell me where you obtained the soul domain of darkness you just used? He did not order. He specifically said, if it is okay with you, and gave Pan Buwang the option to say no. After that, the world fell so utterly silent it was as if everyone had forgotten how to breathe. Pan Buwang lifted his head slightly. Although he did not avoid the abyssal monarch's gaze, he didn't dare to meet it directly as he was a junior. I learned it myself, Your Majesty. He did not refuse to answer, and the answer he gave stunned everyone. If he really learned and invented it on his own, then just how shocking was his natural talent for darkness that he could create a surprise move that instantly defeated the twin stars. As he said this, an overwhelming sense of sorrow and melancholy, one that he was clearly having difficulty suppressing and was only spiraling out of control over time, flowed out of Pan Buwang. Fog Monarch. Before you enter the Pure Land, there is one thing you must mentally prepare yourself for, Buwang. After you defeat the Star and Moon Divine Sons, there is a chance the Abyssal Monarch may set his gaze on you and ask you about the origins of your original abyss that severs the night. Buwang. This disciple dares not question your words, Master. But if I may speak up, the Abyssal Monarch has never shown interest even when a kingdom of God is in peril, and divine regents were replaced with little warning. This disciple just can't see him paying me any, Fog Monarch. I only require your obedience, Buwang, as you command, Master. Fog Monarch, assuming this scenario takes place, you know what to say, don't you? Buwang. I have learned it myself during my darkest moments. But how can my lie possibly fool the Abyssal Monarch? Fog Monarch. If falsehood isn't enough, then self-destruction will do. Buwang. I request your guidance, Master. Fog Monarch. Think of your mother, think of Shen Wuqing, think about everything you have lost. Think about your pain, your sorrow, your defiance, your despair. Let it consume your soul until all other emotions are blotted out, including your lies. Pan Buwang's fingers curled unconsciously, and his body trembled uncontrollably as the all-too-painful memories spread inside his soul sea. Buwang lost his mother, his beloved mother, and so fell into gray despair for a time. I once traveled to Dreamweaver wishing only to fall into an eternal dream, but was cast out instead. So I roamed the endless fog. His voice grew hoarse, and every word seemed to be infused with tangible despair that stabbed at every listener's soul. One time I was near death in the endless fog. In my dreams, I wished only to fall to slumber within the eternal darkness. When I awoke, I discovered that I was surrounded by all-consuming darkness that blotted out the sky itself. Only my spear, Chang Zheng of Silent Night, rang and trembled in my hand. It pulled me back from the eternal night like my mother's hand. As if reborn, I rose to my feet and cut the night with my spear. At that moment, I experienced enlightenment and named the technique, Original Abyss that Severs the Night. Everyone knew more or less what had happened to Pan Buwang. It was clear he was doing his utmost to control his emotions before the Abyssal Monarch. Still, the bone-piercing despair, the heart-searing pain, the blood-soaked words, all of it made them feel deep sympathy for him. The original abyss that severs the night, an enlightenment he experienced while being moments away from soul death. No wonder it possessed such potent soul-devouring ability. The Abyssal Monarch nodded slightly and raised his hand. Then he lightly tapped Pan Buwang twice on the shoulder. This was the monarch's way of comforting his subject, a favor countless divine children could not even dream of having. It made Pan Yusheng's eyebrows jump like crazy, and every man and woman of Owl Butterfly felt like a storm was churning inside their heart. Then, the Abyssal Monarch's following words flipped their world upside down. This lone one once thought that it's impossible for this world to birth a pure child of darkness anymore. To think that this impossible wish of mine would be fulfilled in this era. Monarch's words felt like the voice of heaven, shaking the soul and stunning the people beyond their wildest imaginations. A pure child of darkness. The highest, greatest people of the abyss were gathered here in Eden's crown today. So they knew very well what this meant. According to the records of dark, profound energy, it referred to someone with perfect affinity and mastery of dark, profound energy. A pure body of darkness that only existed in the records before today. Without exaggeration, such a person had never existed in the history of the abyss. Who would have thought that Pan Buwang, former Owl Butterfly divine son who was deposed, and even subsequently tossed out of the Owl Butterfly kingdom of God like trash, would accomplish an unprecedented miracle of darkness that earned even the attention of the Abyssal Monarch. Pan Yusheng took a step forward. He was the prey eternal divine regent, and yet his throat bobbed up and down chaotically, and the corners of his mouth were visibly twitching against his will. Despite all this, he could not make a single sound. As for the Owl Butterfly experts behind him, their expressions could only be described as terribly diverse and utterly spectacular. Wearing a perfectly reasonable look of surprise and curiosity, Yun Qi asked Meng Kongchen in a low tone, "Can you give me an idea of how rare this pure child of darkness is, Senior?" Meng Kongchen responded simply, "It is unprecedented in the past or the present." Shock bloomed across Yun Qi's face. A while later, he said softly, "Does that mean that the owl butterfly kingdom of God has tossed away a bright pearl that would have made history with their own hands?" Actually, scratch that. After today, the owl butterfly kingdom of God's attitude toward Pan Buwang is going to change dramatically. They will most likely appoint a new divine son. Meng Kongchen slowly shook his head and sighed quietly. Unfortunately, Owl Butterfly went too far and did too much for Pan Buzuo. The things they did to Pan Buwang, they have cut off that possible future with their own hands. The abyssal monarch's eyes were still firmly glued to Pan Buwang, but a closer look would reveal that he wasn't actually looking at his face or his eyes. He was really staring at the natural darkness wafting above his head. It's so pure, so gentle and calm. There are even traces of original nether. Are you blessing me in your dreams? Is this a sign that you will soon return? I knew it, I knew it. This must mean that the eternal Pure Land is the final end of this abyss of dreams. Pan Buwang, the abyssal monarch spoke up again in the same gentle voice as before. I have heard a little about your story. I can empathize with your pain and sorrow as well. Maybe you are naturally talented, or maybe the grayish despair you experienced was so deep that it culminated in the miracle of darkness you are experiencing right now. He did not ask when or what cultivation level Pan Buwang was at when he achieved perfect compatibility with darkness. Maybe the answer wasn't important, or perhaps he did not wish to hear an answer that went against his hopes and expectations. You have fulfilled a wish this lone one thought would never be fulfilled. This lone one is delighted. As such, this lone one promises to fulfill one wish for you. If there is anything you would like to wish for, then say it. So long as it does not harm the natural order, then this lone one will satisfy it. For a time, silent gasps appeared all over the place. This was a promise from the abyssal monarch himself, and he had given it in front of everyone. It was a kind of honor and favor that countless divine children dared not even dream of obtaining in their lifetimes. The blood drained from Pan Buzuo's face instantly. The expressions of the members of Owl Butterfly also became 1,000,000 times more colorful and varied than before. They could already predict what Pan Buwang's greatest desire was: to regain his identity as the Owl Butterfly divine son, to become the one and only. Otherwise, why would he go so far as to enter the Pure Land via the Star and Moon Kingdom of God? Why would he backstab Sha Xing and fight for the honor of Owl Butterfly? His objective was as clear as day at this point, and the abyssal monarch's promise was the nail in the coffin. Even if that wasn't the case, Pan Buwang was currently the possessor of a miraculous body of darkness, the awe-inspiring achievement of victory over the twin stars, and even the mild but irrefutable attention of the abyssal monarch. Who in the world dared to say that Pan Buwang did not possess the right to replace Pan Buzuo even if his divine essence was poorer than the latter's? As expected, Pan Buwang looked terribly agitated after hearing the abyssal monarch's promise. His body trembled, and his voice trembled harder as he spoke. The reason Buwang did everything I could to enter the Pure Land, and even go so far as to reveal my hidden skills, is all to earn some favor with Father, and obtain just one item. He half-turned in Pan Yusheng's direction and met his father's gaze briefly. Then he slowly bowed his head and said slowly, "I ask that. You give me?" Pan Yusheng's complexion was ashen, and Pan Buzuo's face was positively bloodless. In fact, the Owl Butterfly divine son was swaying a little as if he could faint at any moment. After becoming the Owl Butterfly divine son, he resorted to all sorts of unspeakable methods to utterly remove the potential threat that Pan Buwang posed. In the end, he was able to die the man in total despair, and even exile him from the Owl Butterfly Kingdom of God. He never dreamed that the potential threat he thought he removed completely would somehow make a comeback, much less one as absolute as this. It was blindingly obvious what was going to happen after Pan Buwang made a comeback. He was going to, the forever bond you made with Mother. When the two of you wed, Pan Yusheng's expression froze instantly, a ray of absent-mindedness and bewilderment shooting out of his eyes. Every Owl Butterfly member was stunned. Pan Buzuo stopped trembling and froze from head to toe, as if he had just heard the most ridiculous thing in the entire world. This was truly an answer that no one had anticipated. The abyssal monarch's expression did not change. He asked indifferently, "Is that all you want?" "Yes," Pan Buwang answered without hesitation. Once upon a time, Buwang sought to end it all. However, that is no longer the case. Now I only wish to spend the rest of my life with something to guide my heart and will. Everything I could have inherited from Mother, besides the Chang Zheng of the Silent Night, was destroyed. The only thing that still exists is the forever bond. It also contains the last wisp of her soul, the only wisp that still exists in this world. Facing toward Pan Yusheng, Pan Buwang dropped to one knee and bowed his head deeply. Very well. In 2 words, the abyssal monarch had made Pan Yusheng's choice for him. Yusheng! The monarch looked at the prey, eternal divine regent and said 2 words. He didn't give an order, but it was an irrefutable order all the same. Without a word, Pan Yusheng reached into his portable space and pulled out what looked like a dot of black light. Then he pushed it in Pan Buwang's direction. Pan Buwang stumbled and nearly pounced toward the dot of black light on all 4s. He hurriedly yet carefully caught the dot of black light in his hands. It was a small and delicate jade bond. At the center of the jade bond was a tiny soul crystal that glimmered weakly. The forever bond was sealed into a soul thread during the wedding of a man and woman of the owl butterfly kingdom of God. It symbolized the eternal bond of their hearts and souls. However, Pan Yusheng's soul thread was missing from the forever bond. He had either removed it earlier or just now. Sensing the soul presence belonging to his mother, so weak yet so warm, Pan Buwang instantly burst into tears. Hands trembling, he slowly pressed the tiny jade bond against his solar plexus so hard it was as if he was trying to mold it into his heart. At that moment, the emotional outburst touched everyone. It was simply impossible for this to be an act or some sort of deception. Pan Buwang, he truly just wanted to obtain and preserve the final wisp of his mother's soul. Thank you for bestowing this favor. Your Majesty, thank you for giving me this. Father. Right now, every word he spoke was shuddering with tears. Coming from the man who showed no emotion whatsoever even when he defeated the twin stars in an instant, it said a lot of things. Even the anger and humiliation residing in Sha Xing's eyes earlier had been replaced by something indescribably complex. Rise! As soon as the command was given, Pan Buwang found himself lifted to his feet by a gentle but irresistible force. Looking at the tear stains on his face, the abyssal monarch asked, "Where will you be going next, Pan Buwang?" The fact that the abyssal monarch was asking this implied an offer. If Pan Buwang said, "I wish to remain in the Pure Land," then the abyssal monarch would accept it for sure. Hands pressed together and holding the last bit of warmth that existed in this world, Pan Buwang whispered, "Buwang has fulfilled his wish and no longer has a reason to impose on the Pure Land, so this is where I will take my leave." He bowed deeply to the abyssal monarch, voice free yet determined. The abyssal monarch nodded. Before the young man left, he gave him one last piece of advice. Never submit to fate, no matter what circumstances you are facing. With that, Pan Buwang left Eden's crown. There was no hesitation or yearning in his body language whatsoever. However, the feelings he stirred in everyone's heart would not fade until a very, very long time later. Yusheng! The abyssal monarch looked straight ahead and spoke in a voice that reached the top of the clouds. This lone one has never desired to get involved with another person's karma, much less interfere with another family's business. I only hope that you will not regret your choices. Pan Yusheng bowed respectfully to him. Yusheng receives your guidance. Yun Qi narrowed his eyes slightly and hit a sigh of relief. As expected, the abyssal monarch did not say anything even though he surely must have noticed Pan Buwang's perfect divine essence. It was because the pure body of darkness was the one thing that truly deserved his attention. The rest, well, it did not deserve his comments, to put it mildly. Yun Qi preferred it this way. It wasn't like this pleasant surprise could not be revealed at this time, but it would be far more effective if it were revealed at a later date. Inside the barrier, the plainly dressed Shen Wuyi was still carrying herself with an air of lofty, lonely dignity. Meng Jiangxi took a step forward and said unhurriedly, "I will face her." However, Yun Qi immediately grabbed his arm and said, "There is no hurry. You can decide whether you want to enter after watching a match." "Why not?" Although Meng Jiangxi was astonished, he saw no reason to refute Yun Qi's words. Meanwhile, the owl butterfly kingdom of God was still drowning in a bizarre atmosphere. At some point, the old man standing behind Pan Yusheng finally lost his cool and sent his divine regent a sound transmission. "Are we seriously not going to pursue Pan Buwang, Supreme One?" "HMPH," Pan Yusheng let out a cold harumph. "He's just posturing. I'm sure he's waiting for us to ask him to return. Leave him be. We can look for him in an hour. Maybe only half an hour. He won't have gone far." At the same time, Sha Xing suddenly clenched his teeth and left the scene at high speed. Xian Yue subconsciously reached out to catch him, but he thought better and withdrew his arm halfway. Xing was frowning slightly, but just like Xian Yue, he chose against commanding Sha Xing to come back. It was at this moment Shenwu Yi finally chose an opponent. Eyes staring straight at the boundless kingdom of God's formation, she declared, "I have long heard of the #1 divine son. I request your guidance." Pan Buwang wasn't just leaving Eden's crown, he was leaving the Pure Land altogether. Chest filled with excitement for having obtained his mother's final personal belonging, and more profound fear and respect toward his master, he didn't stop for even an instant. He was less than 50 kilometers from the boundary of the Pure Land when an unexpected voice called out to him. "Brother Buwang." Pan Buwang gradually slowed to a stop, but he did not turn around. His back facing toward Sha Xing, he said indifferently, "You treated me as a friend and helped me a lot, and yet I used you as a stepping stone. Therefore, you no longer need to address me as Brother Buwang." Brother Buwang. Despite what he said, Sha Xing continued to address Pan Buwang as a brother. The anger and scorn that resided in his eyes during their earlier combat were gone, replaced by sincerity and purity that were exactly the same as before their fallout. "I was consumed by anger earlier and lost all of my reason. I have said too many things that hurt you deeply." Pan Buwang. "Now that I have regained my calm, I finally understand that you weren't planning to use me as a stepping stone to return to the owl butterfly kingdom of God. On the contrary, knowing how deep your love for your mother runs, there is simply no way that you are a cold and heartless person." Pan Buwang finally turned around to face Sha Xing, but there was no emotion in his eyes whatsoever. "What are you trying to say? Or more accurately, what are you trying to prove?" Sha Xing sucked in a deep breath before beginning. "Do you still remember how we came to be friends, Brother Buwang? You had injured one of your own to protect the ordinary citizens of a land of the living. You had admitted your mistake and apologized to me without hesitation. You are also the only one who dared to befriend the eternal night divine daughter, Shenwu Qing, so that she would not be alone. I was delighted to become your friend. My image of you has never faded after you lost your status as a divine son. More than anything, I want to believe that a person's true nature does not change easily. So, Brother Buwang, you must never do something like giving up on yourself or committing an act that you know you will regret. If you ever need my help, even if it's just to serve as your stepping stone again, please do not hesitate to seek me out. If it's you, 1 time, 10 times, I will not hesitate to help you." Sha Xing knew Pan Buwang's greatest secret. He knew that his master was the Fog Monarch. So when Pan Buwang surprised everyone by not using the Abyssal Monarch's wish to ask to return to the Owl Butterfly Kingdom of God, Sha Xing immediately had a vague, unsettling feeling that Pan Buwang was willingly sinking himself into a terrible, dark abyss. "Ha!" Pan Buwang's response to Sha Xing's kind words was to let out a cold, ugly bark of laughter. "Allow me to ask you a question, Divine Son Xing," he said coldly. "Have you ever experienced being stomped into the smelliest, rottingest swamp for 1,400 hours by over 100 people?" Sha Xing froze. "I have. It happened right in front of my mother's grave. I could not put on even a sliver of resistance because they would shatter the gravestone I just carved for my mother otherwise." Sha Xing's breathing grew heavy, and his mouth opened and closed wordlessly like a fish. He did not know what to say. Pan Buwang's mouth split into a chilling smile. He then raised his little finger and covered it with his hand, so only the barest tip was poking out of the surface. "This is but the tiniest wisp of humiliation I have received throughout the years." "But why?" Sha Xing subconsciously asked. "Just what kind of terrible grudge exists between you and Pan Buzuo for him to treat you like this after he became the divine son?" "That's a good question." Pan Buwang's smile grew even more ridiculing. "Unfortunately, the answer is nothing. This all happened purely because I am a potential threat. Let's use you as an example, Star Divine Son. You've grown accustomed to being the noble and unparalleled Divine Son for a long time, haven't you? Can you accept suddenly losing it all one day?" Sha Xing could not say the words, "I can." Pan Buwang continued, "I am the Owl Butterfly Kingdom of God's first divine son of this generation. I grew up in a shower of flattery and praise. I was accustomed to all this and believed that this was how the world should be. I believed my life would never change. The only potential threats I was ever concerned about were cultivation bottlenecks and father's disappointment. Now that I think back, how foolish and laughable I was. However, Pan Buzuo is my successor. He understands what a potential threat truly is, and he is afraid that he will one day be replaced. He is afraid that I, like all the latent God-bearers who awakened their divine essence after they were born, would surpass him. even if the possibility of this happening is minuscule. That is why he gave everything he could to wipe out the greatest potential threat to his position. Me. He could not kill me, but he could take everything away from me. He could wipe out everything I ever depended on and even destroy me mentally and spiritually. Is that all? Sha Xing murmured in disbelief. Yes, that is all, Pan Buwang continued in an indifferent tone. Do you know why not a single man or woman in Owl Butterfly is able to smile even though I defeated you and the moon divine sun and earned the kingdom of God an unprecedented amount of face? It's because too many of them. Maybe it was themselves. Maybe it was their children. Or maybe it was their juniors, partook in my trampling in order to curry favor with Pan Bujuo. All these so-called brothers and sisters who used to admire me, curry favor with me, and praise me changed their faces into something utterly unrecognizable overnight. Heh, heh, he laughed. It was a cold, terrible laugh. There is one thing I must give Pan Bujuo, though. His methods are beyond vile, and he deserves to die 1,000,000 deaths for doing it, but there is no question how effective they are. After all, even though I had gained the qualifications to surpass him, there is no one in Owl Butterfly who would dare to make me a divine son once more, would they? But, my father, Pan Buwang interrupted whatever Sha Xing was trying to say. The father who once showered me with love and care only had a few harmless rebukes to offer my abusers. Later, he did not even bother to rebuke them. Later still, I was the one who was rebuked. In the end, well, you know what happened. The diverse faces of humanity are truly interesting, aren't they? Sha Xing. Wuking was the only thing keeping my spirit intact during the most difficult time of my life, and she died. Have you ever known what it's like to have your faith crumble into nothing, star divine sun? This feeling that everything in the world had turned into gray. It is most curious. Oh, sorry. I forgot that your beloved is the 13th princess of the shining star realm, and your love for each other is as deep as it is reciprocated. Now that I think about it, your wedding date is near, isn't it? I should not be talking about such inauspicious things. Sha Xing raised his hand, but his throat was parched. Have you ever experienced the helplessness and despair of your father doing everything in his power to protect your mother's murderer, even though he knew full well that she was murdered, and who did it? Have you ever known how painful it is to see your mother's belongings being destroyed one by one, unable to do anything to stop it? You can stir up my insides with your heavenly wolf holds a star, and I promise you it cannot hold a candle to even an instant of what I felt at those moments. Enough. Enough already? Sha Xing's hands started shaking slightly. Just listening to Pan Buwang's words and imagining himself in his shoes for even an instant was enough to make him cease all such imaginations forever. Pan Buwang turned his back on Sha Xing once more. So, for someone who is still a divine son, whose parents and beloved are still alive and well, whose greatest pitfall in his life is just getting injured in the endless fog. What right do you have to console me? And who gave you the gall to say that a person's nature would not change easily? Sha Xing's eyes were utterly blank at this point. Pan Buwang's chest heaved heavily for a moment. When he spoke once more, his voice became even and gentle. That said, do not hesitate to enjoy your nobility and innocence, star divine son. I hope there will never be a day when you have no choice but to shed your innocence and goodness. He took one step forward before stopping in his tracks again. Here is one last piece of advice for you. Do not try to approach me again, and definitely do not morally kidnap yourself with our so-called bond. You shouldn't, and I am not worth it. Pan Buwang sped off toward the horizon once more. He was gone in just the blink of an eye. Sha Xing did not chase after him. He simply stood where he was for a very, very long time. At Eden's crown, Dian Jiuzhi slowly stepped out of the group. All eyes were on the #1 divine son. No one, including himself, expected someone to challenge him this quickly. Although this was a battle between divine children, and the combatants would be fighting on the same cultivation level, Dian Jiuzhi was still the oldest and most powerful of them all. His profound accumulation, experience, and knowledge far exceeded any other divine child. In other words, assuming that their cultivation levels were equal, Dian Jiuzhi was unquestionably invincible no matter who he faced. Profound 1. That demonic grandma probably ordered this pitiful girl to make an example out of you. Dian Rahu said indifferently, Go, there is no need to show any mercy to a girl serving that old, demonic grandma. No one thought he was wrong to address Shen Wuyi as a pitiful girl. In another kingdom of God, being chosen to be a god-bearer was the honor of a lifetime. But a god-bearer who Shen Wuyanai chose. How else could they describe her besides pitiful? The previous Eternal Night Divine Daughter, Shen Wuqing, had carried herself with a kind of soul-piercing loneliness and gloominess. Perhaps the only warmth she ever felt came from the once arrogant and fearless, the one who faced hardships head-on, Pan Buwang. Today her corpse was still cooling. Actually, scratch that. Considering that Shen Wuqing committed what Shen Wuyan I considered the gravest error a woman could ever make, and refused to admit her mistake until the moment she died, it was entirely up for question whether she even left a corpse behind. Dian Jiuzhi leaped into the air and landed inside the barrier as light as a feather and as elegant as a poem. Although Dian Rahu told him not to show mercy to a daughter of eternal night, the self-cultivation that was etched in his very bones still caused him to give Shen Wuyi a polite salute. Boundless Dian Jiuzhi greets you. I am honored to receive the guidance of the newly appointed Eternal Night Divine Daughter. Shen Wuyi did not say anything. She only turned her wrist and caused a soft ding to echo in everyone's ears. There was a dark, crimson-colored flash, and a thin, long sword appeared in Shen Wuyi's hand. The hilt of the sword was pitch black in color. The blade was about 1.3 meters long and pitch black. It was etched with dark red patterns that glowed faintly like bloody pupils that were peering into the world from the darkest night. Meng Jiangxi explained to Yun Qi softly, "This sword was originally the sword of the divine son of the eternal night kingdom of God, Crimson Pupil. One, however, Shen Wuyan gave it an intolerably vulgar name after she became divine regent. She named it the Heartless Sword." Yun Qi. Yun Qi wore a look of dumbfoundedness that Meng Jiangxi clearly approved of. He continued, "The eternal night kingdom of God has another divine sun weapon called Profound Sky Cleansing Moon. It is a beautiful skybreak sting with spatial powers. Shen Wuyan later changed its name to Heartbreak Sting." He shook his head with a regretful look on his face. The chief priest raised his palm, an old, bronze-colored, profound light shone out of it. "Shen Wuyi of Eternal Night is at the 6th level of the Divine Extinction Realm. Dian Jiuzhi of Boundless is at the 8th level of the Divine Extinction Realm. For this battle, Dian Jiuzhi must accept the Profound Rage Seal so that his cultivation level is equal to Shen Wuyi's." "I'm in your care, Chief Priest." Dian Jiuzhi turned around to salute him. However, a cold, indifferent voice rang beside his ears. "It is unnecessary." Dian Jiuzhi side-eyed Shen Wuyi with a slightly odd expression. After the initial shock had passed, the crowd was chuckling lightly or shaking their heads in silence. Dian Rahu, one of the few men who did not give a shit about the right place and time, was laughing out loud. "Ha ha ha ha, this girl, how interesting, ha 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 ha. This woman. Just what is she thinking?" Meng Jiangxi frowned deeply. "Is she thinking about fighting Dian Jiuzhi at his strongest? Does she know who she is facing? Has she gone mad?" Yun Qi was frowning slightly as well. It did not disappear even after a long time. Dian Jiuzhi's astonishment only lasted a moment. He did not jeer at her or get frustrated with her. Instead, he said calmly, "You are a permanent resident of the eternal night kingdom of God, and today is our first meeting. I understand why you would not know much about me, eternal night divine daughter. I am Dian Jiuzhi. I am currently 52 sexagenary years old and an 8th level divine extinction realm profound practitioner. In terms of the profound way, I am 51 sexagenary years more experienced and knowledgeable than you. In terms of physical body, I possess the divine vein of great rage. It is fairly compatible with the boundless manifestation art of the boundless kingdom of God. In other words, even if my cultivation level is suppressed to your level, I still hold a great advantage in terms of the profound way and the physical body, or more accurately, an unfair advantage." He did not conceal anything. He told Shen Wuyi exactly how big his advantage was. "So I advise you to reconsider your words, eternal night divine daughter." However, Dian Jiuzhi's kind words did not move Shen Wuyi's expression in the slightest. When she spoke again, her tone was exactly as indifferent as before. "I said, it is unnecessary." The yellow light in the chief priest's hand vanished, and he did not attempt to persuade Shen Wuyi. He said in a heavy voice, "In that case, the profound rage seal will not be applied. Begin." There was no turning back once the chief priest had given his word. It would appear that even the chief priest disliked the eternal night kingdom of God. Dian Jiuzhi had more to say, but the chief priest's verdict forced him to swallow it. Facing Shen Wuyi and hiding a sigh, he clasped his right hand behind his back and slowly raised his left hand. "My age, cultivation level, and physical body are all greater than yours. Even if I win, it would not be a fair victory." Rather than winning, I would rather learn from you and witness the celestial appearance of the eternal night divine daughter with my own eyes. Only then will this fight be worthwhile to. So, I'll allow you 10 breaths to attack first. 10 breaths later, I will stop defending and start attacking. 10 breaths. At the level of the divine extinction realm, being able to attack without retaliation for 10 breaths straight was a significantly stupid handicap, to say the least. If not for the fact that Dian Jiuzhi's character was known to the entire abyss, and that his expression and body language were completely honest, it would have been interpreted as a thorough insult. Ha 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 ha, good. Dian Ranhu let out another bark of laughter and said to the juniors standing next to him. With this statement, Jiuzhi both showed off the generosity of Boundless without giving up any pretext for gossip, and humiliated the bitches of Eternal Night in the same sentence. This way, they can't even make an excuse after they lose without looking ugly. Dian Sansi replied, Actually, I think Jiuzhi is allowing the Eternal Night Divine Daughter the chance to show off the splendor of Eternal Night to everyone during these 10 breaths. He hopes that this will allow her to wow the crowd and spread her name throughout the abyss. Even if she ultimately loses, her journey to the Pure Land would not have been in vain. 3. He added after a pause, Jiuzhi has always been like this. He habitually hands out kindness to both familiar faces and strangers. Smile stiffening, Dian Rahu slowly shook his head. Ah, damn it, he seriously is inflexible in this regard. Shenwu did not say anything. One hand clasped behind her back, she slowly raised her sword and pointed it at Dian Jiuzhi, who was still unarmed at this point. As the crimson markings on the blade grew dangerously deep, Yun-Chi snuck a glance at the cold, black, and oppressive-feeling palanquin. From start to finish, Shenwu Yanai did not react at all. The crowds were scoffing or snorting. Dian Rahu was openly laughing. The lightless divine regent's temper was legendary, to put it mildly, and yet she remained unnaturally calm this whole time. What was the divine vein of great rage? Yun-Chi knew it very well. Extraordinary physical strength and toughness weren't the only qualities it bestowed. The quantity and quality of profound energy of a profound practitioner with the divine vein of great rage far surpassed that of a peer at the same level as well. Even for her, could she really defeat an 8th-level divine extinction realm profound practitioner at the 6th level, much less the possessor of the divine vein of great rage, Dian Jiuzhi? The chief priest's eyelids were lowered. He seemed to think that it was beneath him to watch this upcoming battle directly. His understanding of the divine vein of great rage was far more profound than Yun-Chi's. That was why he found it beyond laughable that the Eternal Night Divine Daughter was planning to challenge it without any handicap whatsoever. It was at this moment that an ephemeral voice rang in his ears. Rage, watch this girl closely. The chief priest's gaze abruptly solidified. Ding, Shenwu moved, the heartless sword drawing a crimson line in the air and moving straight toward Dian Jiuzhi. However, the crimson line came to an abrupt stop an instant before it could reach the divine sun. Dian Jiuzhi was currently holding 2 fingers in front of himself, and sitting between them was the shockingly cold tip of the heartless sword. The blade stopped in midair, unable to move even an inch further. Shenwu's figure was frozen in place as well. Dian Jiuzhi's expression did not change. His fingers weren't covered in profound light. Not a single wound or a bead of blood could be seen either. The youngsters who were witnessing Dian Jiuzhi's strength for the first time were all crying out in astonishment. It was because Shenwu's sword was imbued with the terrifying, profound power of a 6th-level divine extinction realm practitioner. The light in Shenwu's eyes didn't change. She abruptly spun on her feet and drew a crimson crescent next. The shrill noise of a blade cutting through the air was so sharp that it felt like the very space of Eden's crown was cut. Ding. There was a soft ding, and Dian Jiuzhi's left hand appeared before his forehead. He had lifted a single finger and caught the tip of Shenwu's sword with it. That was the only move he made, but it was enough to wipe out the crimson scar in an instant. Shenwu's form changed again. Like a stunning shadow, she spun in retreat before the heartless sword shone crimson and unleashed dozens of sword scars in an instant. Every single one of them contained the terrible power of a 6th-level divine extinction realm profound practitioner. Some of the scars looked like crescents, and some like bloody shadows. They wove a web that surrounded Dian Jiuzhi, causing the surrounding space to groan. The web of slashes caused even the spectators to feel chilled to their core, but Dian Jiuzhi remained where he was. He did not move a muscle, and his expression did not change one whit. His right hand still clasped behind his back, He moved his left hand so fast that it left behind afterimages, and his fingers so swift that they looked like illusions. Showing exactly zero signs of panic or inelegance, he danced through the web of swords like a graceful butterfly. Ding, 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 ding. A series of metallic clangs occurred as Dian Jiuzhi blocked the blade with his fingers. It sounded like metal rain. Each sound accurately matched a sword shadow, and each crimson scar was wiped away completely by his fingers. Forget leaving a wound on his person. The assault had failed to move even his sleeve. This was the case from the start until the end. Gasps and cries of astonishment came from the crowd. SSS! Meng Jiangxi drew in a long, deep breath before exclaiming in surprise. Earlier, I thought for sure that Shen Wuyi's 6th-level divine extinction realm was just a pretty shell with a rotten core that the lightless divine regent had forced into existence by her terrifying obsession. But I was wrong. Her cultivation is as genuine as it gets. Even through the barrier, I feel like those sword shadows could skewer me. In comparison, it would appear that Dian Jiuzhi's terrifying strength needs to be reevaluated yet again. Concealing his shock, Meng Jiangxi lowered his voice and said, "It's clear that his divine vein of great rage has ascended to greater heights not long ago. I can hardly believe that he's handling the power of a 6th-level divine extinction realm profound practitioner like child's play." Yun Qi did not give him a response. Instead, he looked in the direction of the eternal night kingdom of God once more. The stifling cold and quiet indifference that occupied that space hadn't changed one bit. Ding, 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 ding. Again and again, Shen Wuyi attacked Dian Jiuzhi. Without exception, Dian Jiuzhi blocked it all with one hand. It was, as Meng Jiangxi said, child's play. The gap was so large that the crowd gradually grew bored with the show. Xian Yue withdrew his gaze and kept shooting glances behind his back. "Don't worry," Xian Yue said. "Zinger is removing a weight in his mind. He will return." Xian Yue regained his senses and fell into thought for a moment. Then he blurted out, "Although Sha Xing and Pan Buwang were friends since long ago, why do I feel like they share some sort of unknown story between them?" The word fog monarch appeared in his head without warning, though he wiped it away just as quickly. Then he turned around and asked, "Do you think Pan Buwang will be reappointed as the owl butterfly divine son after today, master?" "Impossible." Xian Yue's answer was the same as Meng Kongchen's reply to Yun Qi. "But why?" Xian Yue couldn't understand. He understood why the owl butterfly kingdom of God would have qualms, but impossible was such a strong word that there could be no doubt. Xian Yue said quietly, "When a person crosses a line that should never be crossed, it is only natural to fear the consequences that come of it. That same fear will drive them to do everything in their power to stop those consequences from becoming true." Xian Xing looked at Xian Yue and explained, "Simply put, Pan Buzuo acted too ruthlessly against Pan Buwang. He did not kill him, but he committed basically every vile act one possibly could to the man. If it were just him, this could still be remedied. However, countless others have actively or passively become his accomplices in order to curry favor with Pan Buzuo, the new divine son." As if that wasn't enough, the Eternal Divine Regent ignored and indulged their actions. Sure, he never played an active role, but the pain he inflicted on Pan Buwang was possibly the worst out of all of them. You're aware of the final outcome. If Pan Buwang had not been kicked out of the Dreamweaver Kingdom of God, he would have succumbed to utter despair and committed soul suicide already. So, knowing all that they have done to him, literally cornering him to the point where he was half a step away from self-destructing, who would dare to accept Pan Buwang's return? Even if they compensated him as best they could, even if he acted perfectly friendly on the outside. Who would dare to believe that his hatred had truly disappeared? Let's assume that he becomes the divine son once more, and the day comes where he inherits his divine power from Pan Yusheng. Who could say he would not reveal his hidden hatred and enact bloody vengeance upon everyone who slighted him then? Heck, the first person he would kill could very well be Pan Yusheng. I see, Xian Yue seemed to get what they were saying. That said, although they could not make Pan Buwang the divine son once more, I am sure the Eternal Divine Regent would spare no effort to bring him back to the owl butterfly kingdom of God. Not only that, he will do everything in his power to repair their relationship. Xian Yue thought for a moment before asking, "Is it because of the abyssal monarch, and because he is afraid that Pan Buwang would become a deadly, uncontrollable threat?" "Those are two valid reasons." Xian Xing narrowed his eyes slightly. "But personally, I believe that the most important reason is..." Xian Yue finished his sentence in a dark tone. The original abyss that severs the night. That dark soul domain is good enough to be passed down in the owl butterfly kingdom of God for eternity. Not only that, Pan Buwang's perfect body of darkness, Tusk, if they could somehow figure out its secrets, if they could find a way to replicate it. Pan Yusheng's heart probably isn't even here anymore. If not for the fact that the abyssal monarch is right here, I bet he would leave the Pure Land immediately and escort Pan Buwang back to the owl butterfly kingdom of God in person. Rizzing. Suddenly, an ear-vibrating screech of space erupted from the battlefield. Shen Wuyi's heartless sword was shaking violently. Its crimson light withdrew into itself until it formed a crimson sword projection so dense that it might as well be tangible. She turned slightly, and the thin, long sword bent dramatically like a bow. Then, it lashed out violently and unleashed a crimson blast in the sky, smoothly severing the world before everyone's eyes from the very center. It looked as if she had poured all of her power into the attack. The light in Dian Jiuzhi's eyes finally changed a little. He raised his left arm slightly, but he wasn't just blocking with his fingers anymore. Instead, he spread his fingers wide, and amidst countless shocked gazes, grabbed the crimson sword projection with his bare hand. Chi. A terrible ripping sound exploded from the center of Dian Jiuzhi's palm. Countless twisted, thin, and narrow red scars were erupting in the space as well. His face remained calm as he slowly clenched his fingers and rapidly extinguished it all, leaving behind only tiny fragments of light. Shred. The sword projection wasn't destroyed yet, but Shen Wuyi abruptly appeared beside Dian Jiuzhi. The light currently projected by the heartless sword was actually stronger than the sword projection she unleashed. This time, Dian Jiuzhi moved. He leaned backward and moved the right hand he had been clasping behind his back this whole time. His movement seemed light and slow, but it accurately caught the blade at the same time a silver-white light flashed out of his person. Boom, there was a loud boom, and both the sword projection and the light of the heartless sword crumbled. Dian Jiuzhi flipped backward and landed on the floor as lightly as a falling leaf. Before him, Shen Wuyi was propelled several kilometers in an instant. It wasn't until she stabbed the sword into the floor and carved a 300-meter-long scar that she finally arrested her momentum. 10 breaths had passed, and Dian Jiuzhi hadn't suffered a single wound. In everyone's opinion, this was the end of this battle. Dian Jiuzhi looked down at the slightly disheveled corner of his sleeve. He then paid Shen Wuyi a heartfelt compliment. "I'll be honest, Eternal Night Divine Daughter. I had harbored doubt regarding your cultivation, thinking that it was the product of hasty accumulation and an unsteady foundation. I am deeply ashamed to have misjudged you this much. 1 sexenary year, the 6th level of the divine extinction realm. I cannot hope to match even a sliver of your talent for the profound way. If we were the same age, I would not even have the right to face you in combat, not even a little." "AI?" Dian Rahu covered his face and sighed deeply. "I told him that there is no need to be courteous with a demoness of eternal night." AI? Dian Sansi was looking at Dian Jiuzhi with respect and admiration, though. This is how Brother Jiuzhi is. He would not change just because others push him to. Suddenly, his heart seized inside his chest, and he found himself casting Yunqi a sideways glance before he knew it. Brother Jiuzhi was such a good person, but to think, Dian Jiuzhi's compliment to Shen Wuyi was heartfelt. He had also offered her more than enough face. Even if she were going to lose horribly, she would only lose a minimal amount of dignity now. Shen Wuyi's response was, "You talk too much." Dian Jiuzhi let out a small sigh before breaking into a relaxed smile. White light was circulating between his fingers when he raised his hand once more. An invisible, formless pressure was slowly spreading to the surroundings. 10 breaths. That was the kindness he gave Shen Wuyi, knowing that there was no way he was going to lose. However, he had no idea that Shen Wuyi did not care about the 10 breaths of advantage her opponent gave her at all. 1. Ed note, I fought hard for I here and above, but TL wouldn't budge. 2. TL note, I gotta say, Dian Jiuzhi is insensitive to the max. He thinks he's being courteous, but he's really actively worsening Shen Wuyi's situation. Assuming Shen Wuyi loses, Shen Wuyanai is going to rip her a few holes as compared to just one if he had just gone all out from the start. The guy really doesn't use his head. 3. TL note, I take it back, this whole goddamn kingdom is made of idiots. She would literally be tortured to death by Shen Wuyanai's hand if the scenario you imagined happened, you stupid. Jiuzhi stopped wasting his breath and covered both his arms in silver, profound light. Gradually, Even his eyes were covered in a sheen of silver. Although the profound light of Boundless and Dreamweaver were both silver, their actual qualities could not be any more different. Dreamweaver's profound light invaded the soul and disturbed the heart, while Boundless represented the greatest strength under the Pure Land. Even before he took action, an invisible pressure had nearly frozen the entire battlefield. Even the air was perfectly still. Shen Wuyi was the eternal night divine daughter, so Dian Jiuzhi could understand her indifference. However, he could not understand why she was completely unperturbed by his display of power. Dian Jiuzhi raised a palm. He was just about to crush the space where Shenwu existed remotely when his vision blurred strangely and without warning. In fact, everything around him was turning blurry as if some sort of invisible power had sealed the surrounding space. The only thing he could see clearly was Shenwu's eyes. She was looking at him from several kilometers away, yet Dian Jiuzhi felt as if her eyes were right in front of him. Speaking of which, her gaze was cold and silent from start to finish. As far as he could tell, it hadn't changed one bit. And yet, Dian Jiuzhi felt as if those eyes saw through his very soul. Those icy, still eyes were so pure and flawless that they resembled the most perfect and limpid glazed glass in the world. It was so pure that not a speck of common dust could be found, much less abyssal dust. Those pure eyes seemed to be peering into his soul sea through his eyes and illuminating every soul string and corner of his soul. It shed light on the darkness, filth, and even wounds he never wanted to touch again, down to the finest detail. He began feeling ashamed and humbled. He felt as if the pure gaze revealed the filthy and embarrassing existence he really was. Dian Jiuzhi abruptly realized that something was wrong and looked away from Shenwu's eyes. However, the strange feeling that his soul was completely seen through remained. Was this a soul attack? No, not at all. He could not find any sign that his soul was invaded in any way. This feeling of shame and self-abasement, were they naturally appearing from the depths of his soul? Dian Jiuzhi's sudden hesitation and unusual eye movements caused Dian Rahu to furrow his brow slightly. Everyone else looked puzzled as well. "What's going on?" Meng Jiangxi asked softly. "Is it just me, or does Dian Jiuzhi look a bit distracted?" Yun Qi was staring at Shenwu unblinkingly, unwilling to lose focus for even a moment. It was at this moment that Shenwu moved. Her right hand, her sword arm, was lowered and her left hand was raised. A white flash later, a sting about 2/3 of a meter long appeared. The sting was gem white, covered in a kind of divine radiance that resembled moonlight. Strange light would occasionally flash from its tip. It was so cold that it was unbearable to look at directly. "It's the profound sky-cleansing moon." Meng Jiangxi corrected himself. "Scratch that, I mean the heartbreak sting. Looking at her form, is she going to use it as a weapon?" Heartbreak sting was a divine child armament possessing the power of space. Its main functions were spatial travel and escape. It was a life-saving artifact meant to protect the eternal night godbearer from danger. But this was the Pure Land, a perfectly safe realm where no threats existed. Therefore, there was no reason to bring it whatsoever. Moreover, space was a higher law compared to water, fire, wind, thunder, earth, light, and darkness. It was challenging to grasp and harder to master. It was also slow to activate and cost an insane amount of energy. Because of this, it was basically impossible to use for combat. When activated during a crisis, a godbearer mostly relied on its inherent spatial divine powers to swiftly activate the spatial profound artifact. The Abyss's power level far exceeded that of the God realm, and its space was just as tough. It was challenging to pass through or break. That was why everyone was confused by Shenwu's decision to bring the eternal Night Kingdom of God's spatial artifact into the battle of divine children. It was at this moment that Yun Qi knitted his eyebrows a little. The space surrounding Shenwu was growing transparent. Then what looked like 7 colorless, luminous clouds emerged from it. "What is that?" Meng Jiangxi voiced his puzzlement. The luminous clouds kept flickering in and out of existence. They did not possess any perceptible aura whatsoever. If not for the fact that they obviously distorted one's vision when looked upon directly, no one would even realize they were there. Puzzlement colored everyone's faces, including the divine regents. Then, surprise bloomed across Hua Fuchen's expression as he blurted out in astonishment. Could it be the exquisite, profound world? The moment the 3 words escaped his mouth, the expressions of every elite changed dramatically. Even those ancient eyes that had seen everything too many times to count abruptly widened to the max. A loud, chaotic commotion instantly erupted within the temple. The exquisite profound world, but how is this possible? Meng Jiangxi muttered to himself in shock. Meng Kongqun was watching the strange, luminous clouds closely and replying in a low tone. It is pretty unbelievable, but this spatial phenomenon. It matches the description in the ancient records perfectly. But didn't the legends claim that it is a spatial divine body that only an ancient true god may awaken? Shen Wuyi, she's just... Meng Jiangxi stammered. Even he could not believe that there would come a day when he would question his own father's words. What is the exquisite profound world? Yun Qi asked dumbly. Meng Jiangxi shook his head and sucked in a deep breath. Only then did he manage to recover from his shock. Brother Yuan, remember that time you asked me if someone possessing the 9 profound exquisite body could possibly exist in this world 19 months ago? According to the records, the exquisite profound world is a special space only a person possessing the 9 profound exquisite body could create. Yun Qi, however, Meng Jiangxi's tone changed. According to the records, everyone in the world could have a 9 profound exquisite body, and the exquisite profound world still should never appear. If Shen Wuyi really is bearing the exquisite profound world, then the ancient records must be terribly wrong in regards to this. As for what is so special about the exquisite profound world, Meng Jiangxi shook his head. All I've seen in the records is the name. I know nothing about it. It was at this moment that Meng Kongqun spoke up. Yuan or Jiangxi, most people believe that the 9 profound exquisite body is special because spaces would naturally form inside their profound veins after it awakened and matured. It accelerates their cultivation speed and makes it so that they don't encounter any bottlenecks. They are both profound vein mutations, but Dian Jiuzhi's profound vein is named the divine vein of great rage, and the 9 profound exquisite body is named the way it is instead of the 9 profound exquisite vein. Why do you think this is the case? Meng Jiangxi did not know the answer, and Yun Qi was no different. The 9 profound exquisite body was a widely known concept. Even in the lower realms, Yun Qi had long heard about it. However, he only knew that it was a profound vein that was a world unto itself, and women possessing the 9 profound exquisite body were excellent, if not the best, cultivation incubators. As for why it obviously sounded like some sort of mutated profound vein but was named the exquisite body, he never thought about it until now. While observing the luminous clouds surrounding Shen Wuyi, Meng Kongqun explained in a low tone. According to the records, the 9 profound exquisite body originates from the profound veins. When it first sprouts, it imbues the profound qi with a kind of special aura that is easily distinguishable. As a result, a woman possessing the 9 profound exquisite body commonly experiences 2 types of fate. If their family background is prestigious enough that no one dares to offend them, then their 9 profound exquisite body will mature, and they will surely become a hegemon of a corner of the world. But if their family background isn't strong enough, then they will choose to, or be forced to become a cultivation incubator. It is a pitiful fate, to say the least. When the exquisite body has matured, an exquisite world will be formed inside its profound veins. Not only will their cultivation speed increase, but they can also exceed the laws to a certain extent and possess a ceiling that is far greater than that of an ordinary profound practitioner. However, this is not the true form of the 9 profound exquisite body. It is just the seed, a seed that could not break through the earth. A seed, Yun Qi could not help but interrupt all that, and it's still just a seed. Yes, it's just a seed. It can only be a seed. Meng Kongqun explained. It's because a mundane body can't withstand the 9 profound exquisite at all. Even among the ancient god race, the chances that a possessor of the 9 profound exquisite body could create the exquisite profound world, and that is assuming that they can perfectly inherit the 9 profound exquisite, is less than 1 in 100. Yun Qi. Exquisite space, exquisite profound world. In the profound way, the word exquisite was often linked to space. For the longest time, Yun Qi thought that the 9 profound exquisite body referred to the exquisite world within their profound veins. It was only now that he realized it was a spatial divine body that even an ancient true god could only pray to obtain. Meng Kongqun continued, 9 profound exquisite body owners are rare, but it's not like they had never appeared in the history of the abyss. But one possessing the exquisite profound world has never appeared, because it's outright impossible. It's why the concept has blurred for many people. If it has never happened before, if it is outright impossible, then why do you and every other senior seem to think that it is the exquisite profound world, Father? Meng Jiangxi asked. Meng Kongchen explained, when the power of space is unleashed, it is inevitable that one will leave behind traces of laws, energies, and dimensions. There are only two exceptions. The first exception is the ancient profound treasure, the world piercer. It could traverse 10,000 realms without leaving a single trace behind. The second exception is the exquisite profound world. Its existence seems to flicker between the real and unreal, and it is perfectly untraceable. Shenwu. This wasn't the first time he said the name of the divine daughter of the eternal night kingdom of God, but the gaze he cast in her direction had changed dramatically compared to before. She intentionally manifested these 7 spatial ripples so that we can see them, but I am unable to detect even the slightest spatial laws from them. That's not all. Not only did she manifest the true 9 profound, exquisite body, that only a true God should be able to manifest at the 6th level of the divine extinction realm. She had even reached the level of 7 profound. That's 7 profound, exquisite worlds in total. According to the ancient records, only 8 people had ever attained perfection and reached the level of 9 profound in the vast history of the God race. She is not far away from that level either. As for what is so powerful about the exquisite profound world, you're going to find out very soon. The divine regent looked at the battlefield closely, and it wasn't just him. This was the first time the battlefield of the battle between divine children received this much attention from the divine regents. The noises outside the barrier sowed doubt in Dian Jiuzhi's heart and caused him to stare at the luminous clouds surrounding Shenwu. They were clearly spatial ripples, but he could not feel any spatial disturbance at all. He was still astonished and puzzled when suddenly the luminous clouds disappeared all at once and a sword beam shone into his eyes. Shred. A sharp sword pierced through space and elicited an impossibly shrill noise. Still, just like before, this level of power was completely useless against Dian Jiuzhi, whose physical strength and cultivation exceeded hers by 2 whole levels. Dian Jiuzhi reached out to grab the sword beam, but unlike before, he wasn't just defending anymore. Instead, he unleashed a merciless blast of power that vowed to crush her in one strike. Every inch of space near his fingers rapidly warped and distorted under pressure. The terrifying spatial distortion and aura revealed the 7 luminous clouds that looked like illusory profound shadows. Dian Rahu subconsciously took a step forward to warn Dian Jiuzhi about the dangers of the profound, exquisite world. But he forced the words back down right before they would exit his throat. So what if that really was the profound, exquisite world, and it was truly as miraculous as the legends claimed? They were 2 whole cultivation levels apart. It was a gap that could never be overcome. He might actually make things worse for the boy if he tried to warn him. Bang boom! The forceful power of the boundless manifestation art erupted, and the space in front of him underwent an extreme distortion for an instant. Shenwu's sword and figure instantly crumbled like dead leaves, before scattering into a cloud of afterimages. Dian Jiuzhi's astonishment lasted only an instant before his heart turned cold. He felt a cold beam heading straight toward his skull. He barely had enough time to think that this was not an instantaneous movement, because there were no traces of a physical or auric dash at all. In fact, the cold beam hadn't slowed down even a little. It was as if her attack had suddenly undergone a spatial curve. Thang! The heartless sword struck Dian Jiuzhi's skull with a metallic clang, and the man's severed hair scattered everywhere. Both his cultivation and body were so strong that the skull-piercing attack wasn't able to penetrate his protective, profound energy completely. But even so, that one instant of pain and surprise was enough to shake Dian Jiuzhi greatly.